If you're a big swim team and you like to order a lot of gear, maybe you ought to check out Swim Outlet Team Division for these reasons. Swim teams receive a 10% discount on bulk orders. Swim teams or organizations get an 8% commission on referred sales. You'll also like their customization services, which is affordable and available at all times during the year for all team gear. With over 50,000 items in stock, you can get most anything you want. Swim Outlet Team Division. You need to try it out. You'll be glad you did.
This is the Morning Swim Show for Tuesday, February 18th, 2014. I'm your host, Jeff Commings. The Southeastern Conference Swimming and Diving Championship meet begins today at the University of Georgia, and a lot of great races are in store as we head into the championship phase of this collegiate season. Rowdy Gaines knows very well how exciting the SEC Championship meet is. He swam at Auburn in the late 70s, early 80s, before gaining fame as an Olympic champion and TV commentator. And we're honored to have Rowdy Gaines join us today in the Finis Monitor to help us preview this meet. Rowdy, it's good to see you. How are you?
Good, Jeff. Good to see you. Good to be with you, buddy.
Well, first off, before we start previewing anything, happy birthday.
Thank you very much. I like to forget about birthdays from now on, but thank you.
I understand that. I know. The sand in the hourglass starts getting a little full on the wrong end.
Once I reach about 47, which is what I am now, then I like to forget about it.
Well,
careful. Don't say anything. Let's move on.
I'm moving on. I am moving on. A great birthday present, I'm sure, for you would be to see Auburn win a conference title, either on the women's or men's side. But I'm not really sure that's going to happen this year. There's a lot of great competition. Everybody's moving up. But we'll talk about the men tomorrow. Let's start with the women today. And it looks like it's going to be a close one, I think. Who do you think is going to win the title?
Well, I mean, on paper, I mean, you love Georgia because they're so deep in almost every stroke in every event. The only little weakness I see is in the butterfly and the sprint butterfly specifically, and that may hurt them in the relays. But otherwise, they're just loaded. Jack Barley, every year, you know, Jeff, every year he comes in with a strong team. They're always vying for championships. He's won 1 million of these SEC championships. He knows how to get his kids ready, not only for the SECs, but also the NC2As. So they've got a really strong team. And at the SECs, I think, Jeff, is so much more important about depth. NC2A is important as well, but not as important at these conference meets. And so Georgia, I think, has the most depth to be able to win this year. And that's my pick. But trust me, it's not going to be a gimme. Florida's going to be very, very tough.
Well, I agree. Georgia is always a very deep team. They have so much talent. But, you know, I think Texas A&M is really going to fight hard for this. Now, the only wild card in this is that they put up a lot of their NCAA qualifying times in November and December, so they don't really need to rest as hard for this meet because a lot of their top swimmers especially have all their cuts. So it's going to be how rested are they going to be, and if they're really rested, then I think they're really going to contend as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jeff, totally. And there's sort of my dark horse in all of this. You know, there's a dark horse on the men's side, dark horse on the women's side. And certainly Steve Boltman. I mean, he was on the Olympic staff in 1988, so you know he's a great coach, a great mind. It's a great staff, and they have arguably the two biggest stars of the meet, and that's Bria Larson and Camille Adams. So I just don't see the depth that they have versus Georgia, and I know that they have a lot of other good swimmers. Liliana Lopez is very good in the middle distance freestyles and the sprints. But I don't know if they can carry the weight on the backs of Bria Larson and Camille Adams to go all the way to victory at the SECs. I think at the NC2As, it's a little bit of a different story, but certainly here at the SECs, they're going to be very tough. But if you think about Georgia, Jeff, and who they have, you know, obviously they've got Olympian Shannon Vreeland, and then they've got Margalis in the breaststroke, Van Landingham in the sprints, so she can shore up those relays there. Amber McDermott kind of takes care of the whole middle distance freestyle. So, you know, every single place. Olivia Smoliga is this, you know, sensational freshman. So, you know, they just got so many different spots that they're good at, and that's going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, it is hard when you got Georgia that can pretty much cover every stroke, every distance pretty well, whereas, like you said, Texas A&M, they are good across a lot of these strokes,
Right.
but they just don't have that kind of talent in every stroke. And like you said, that's really going to matter, not just in individual events, but it's also going to help them in relays, which, big points there.
Absolutely. And another good thing about Georgia is the fact that they're swimming at home. There has to be something about that, to have the home pool and to be able to have home cooking, go home to your, they may be staying in a hotel, but they're home. And that makes a big difference. I remember swimming in a conference meet at home, and I swam better than any other conference I had my entire career. So that's going to be a big plus for them.
Is it just going to be mostly not just it's their pool, they kind of know everything there, but obviously they'll have a lot more Georgia fans. They'll definitely get the noise up.
Yeah, the fans will make a big difference, but at that level, it gets so loud. And you've been to these conference meets, and each section is just so intense that you can really feel the energy. Whether you're from Vanderbilt or Kentucky or Florida or Georgia, it just doesn't really matter, because that intensity is so high for all the teams. And Florida's going to be good too. I'm telling you, Natalie Hines could be, when it's all said and done, the best sprinter in the country at the end of the year. And of course, they've got Elizabeth Beisel, and I talk about Camille and Bria being the biggest names. Well, there's your biggest name right there, Elizabeth Beisel. And she's great in the IMs. The only problem with Beisel, she's so good, she's going to win a couple events most likely, but she doesn't have that sprint capability, which really is so important in the race. Where you said Texas A&M is so good, they've got a couple top 10 sprinters. Florida's got a couple top 10 sprinters. So those relays are critical when you're talking about counting double points. So Georgia and Florida have always been pretty dominant in that, and Auburn's been very good at it. They just don't have the depth this year either.
Talk about Elizabeth Beisel. She's been having a really good senior season. Every dual meet, she's been putting up some great times. Even for a little bit there, she was the top swimmer in the country in the 1,000 freestyle, which, you think Elizabeth Beisel, you don't think 1,000 freestyle, which,
Right.
Looking beyond the college season, I think that's really going to do well for her 400 IM. I mean, everybody remembers how Yi Shi-wen just went right by her in the 400 IM at the Olympics, and I think this is kind of setting her up to say, I don't want that to happen again. I want to be able to have that great endurance in freestyle. But looking back to the college season, I wonder if this is a setup for her and Greg Troy to say, maybe we sit out the 200 backstroke at the NCAAs and swim the 1650. What do you think about that?
Well, believe me, if they get to that point going into the last day where they get to win the meet, then absolutely, she's going to have to, because they've got Russell, who's an Olympian from Canada, who's so good in the 100 back and the 200 back. She can swim anything. She's very good in the sprints. So they've got her to shore that part up. But you're right, Jeff. That's a good point. She could end up swimming the 1650 and score some valuable points and let Russell take care of the 200 back. So, you never know. But again, they don't really have that weakness like Georgia has in the sprint flies. And Georgia's going to have some good, solid flyers when it comes to it. They just haven't had it up to this point. But when you're talking about like Zalewski, who's I think #1 in the country right now in the 100 fly, and you throw in some, a Russell and a Hines, and they've got the breaststroke. So it's going to be it's going to be a crazy meet for sure.
Yeah, it's been a little bit unusual to think that Florida could contend in medley relays when we always think them as having great 800 free relays.
That's
but
right.
Now they've got the backstroke or the breaststroke or the butterfly or in the freestyler. I think it's safe to say that we shouldn't be counting them out.
No, and again, each team has some real big stars. I mean, Emily Boss is great for Auburn. Molly Hannes was one of the best breaststrokers in the country from Tennessee. Matt Kretich has done such an amazing job at Tennessee. So there's great stars across the board. But again, and I hate saying this, I feel kind of bad saying this, but when you get to this championship format, it really is almost a glorified relay meet. You have to be good on the relays. You have to be dominant in the relays because they're just so important in counting those double points. And when you look at the history of this meet, the teams that have won the championship have been good on the relays. And that's the Georgias and the Floridas and even the Auburns during their heyday. They were just amazing on the relays. So I think when you look at the relay strength, right now, Georgia, Florida, and to some degree Texas and A&M are the three teams that are going to be very good in those relays.
I want to talk about a couple of events that I think we could see some upsets, and again, it goes back to whether Texas A&M is going to be fully rested or not. 100 breaststroke and the 200 butterfly. I think, as you said, Molly Hannes has been having a great season. I think we could see her win the 100 breaststroke this meet if Bria Larson is not 100% on her game. I mean, Molly almost beat her last year when Bria set the American record, so I think there's a chance that Molly just really wants to be able to say she's SEC champion over the American record holder. And then something that was a little bit of a surprise was LSU's Kara Kopstrow, who beat Camille Adams in a dual meet. So I think Kara's got the momentum going there. Of course, again, it's all just a matter of how rested these swimmers who already have their cuts are going to be, but it's going to make some very exciting racing, and it's great to see a team like LSU be able to contend for a title, because we don't often think about them when we're talking about the top teams at the SEC.
No, and you're so right, Jeff. I love that wealth to be spread out because it's good for swimming. I mean, the bottom line is when you have so many teams that are involved in different events, it helps the sport more. It helps the sport grow. And you're right, Kara's been swimming so well. And nothing epitomized what you're talking about than this past weekend at the Grand Prix, where you just saw so many different people in different stages of their training. And that's certainly going to be true at SECs. How many swimmers have got cuts and are not going to go in the rested? You know, how big a deal? I mean, maybe Steve says, you know, hey, listen, we're not going to win the SEC championship. Maybe we have a chance to win the NCAA champion, be a top 5 team. What do you want to do? Do you want to go be third at SECs and be, you know, third at NC2As, or do you want to try to win SECs and be 7th or 8th at NC2As? And that's a big decision that he and the staff are going to have to make, and all the staffs are going to have to make, even Georgia. So everybody's going to be at a different stage. But Camille will have her hands full. I don't know, Bria, she's something.
Yeah, but
I wouldn't bet against Bria.
I don't like betting against Bria either. Like I said, it's especially in the 100 when the chips are down, she always finds a way to get her hand on the wall.
Yeah,
first.
You're right. You're right.
Real quick, I want to know, as I said, you've been a part of the SEC championships. You swam at Auburn. What makes the SEC one of the more intense conferences in the country?
Well, I think a lot of it is the fact that both the men and women swim together. If you look at the other conferences, most of them do not swim together. So the Pac-10 or the Pac-12 rather, or the Big Ten, I'm doing the Big Ten next weekend, and I'm just doing the Big Ten men. So when you have both of those teams come together and swim in the same meet, it creates such an electric atmosphere because the men and the women are one team. They really get behind each other. A lot of these coaches coach both the men and women. I can't think of a team. Brett's the men and women's coach at Auburn, Troy, Bowerly, Boltman, Kretich. I mean, you go down, Greg Rodenbaugh, who, by the way, has some really good swimmers this year. You know, they're all coached by one coach. So the combination of all those little factors just makes the SEC very special. And usually in the past, if you look at the past, Jeff, the past 15, 20 years, the SEC champion has come out, if not on top, in the top 2 or 3 every year at the NCAAs. So you know if you're going to win SECs, you got a great chance of winning the NCAAs.
It's just something that just came up. Do you think the fact that the SEC is always one of the more exciting meets kind of could convince people that maybe we should have a combined NCAA championship?
I would love to see that. I love the combination. It's a big meet. It does go on for a while. It can be a long day for the coaches, a long day for the athletes. But it's so exciting. Dude, I'm telling you, man. I mean, if you look at the speed of the SECs, it certainly doesn't hurt how fast they go. I mean, every year in and year out, they go really, really fast. So that combination certainly hasn't hurt the quality of the meet. But, you know, it makes for a long day for the athletes. But I think it'd be great. I think it'd be wonderful to see that at the NCAAs.
Yeah, that's something to consider a few years down the road. Well, Rowdy, thank you so much for your analysis of the women's meet. We'll see you tomorrow, and we'll talk about the men. Sounds good. Thanks, Jeff. All right, so that's going to do it for today's edition of the Morning Swim Show. As I said, Rowdy and I will be back tomorrow to break down some of the things we might see happen in the men's SEC championship. I'm Jeff Commings. Thanks for watching.